I need to start with the remark that I'm only presenting someone else's work, so all the addresses of appreciation must be focused to another person. I'm only presenting what he did, and he's also named here, Gregor Bulc. We can go to the second slide now. In his report, Gregor analyzes a specific contemporary political and media discourse in Slovenia with a focus on migration and race issues in the 6 years since the start of the so-called Syria refugee crisis. More precisely, he focuses on the radicalization mainstreaming through far-right SDP party-affiliated traditional media, that is magazines and also the party television, if I may say so, and also the new media, such as digital platforms and social media. The report examines how these media have constructed non-white migrants as the racialized other, who presumably poses a threat to local well-being, instilling in citizens a sense of injustice and grievance, and leading to a division and polarization between us and them in traditional media discourse, as well as us and you in the new media discourse. The report presents a series of specific media objects that drew the attention of the general public through repeated offline and online exposure, as well as social media sharing. Using representation analysis and critical discourse analysis, the report contends that an alliance of far-right politicians, far-right mass media, and radical or radicalized audiences, users of social media, has been established, which is not only an important factor in strengthening the exclusionary Slovenian identity, but also a potential trigger of radicalized behavior of citizens in relation to migrants. So the report has 4 main parts. The first one is methodology, where the analytical tools are presented which are used in the analysis of the data. The second chapter is dedicated to media landscape in Slovenia, and this deserves some introductory remarks. Slovenia became independent in 1991, and its population is more or less homogeneous. It's white and it's religiously mostly Roman Catholic. There are 3 recognized minority groups, and in addition to them, there are unrecognized minority groups, mostly formed of the people of the former Yugoslavia, and there is also a small Muslim minority group formed of the people of ex-Yugoslavia, and they are perceived differently than the migrant Muslims which came in the last years. So about the second chapter, which deals with Slovenian media landscape, it needs to be said that a lot of changes occurred since Slovenia became independent, and mostly the media landscape functions with a significant split down the middle of political arena. So we also have quite clear divide between left-wing and right-wing media. The divide in Slovenia is perhaps to some extent particular because it doesn't really focus on economic policies, but more or less reflects attitudes toward tradition, religion, nation, the Second World War era, and the post-war socialist times. The report focuses mostly on the media which are connected to the SDP party, and this party seems to openly manage 2 media. One is Nova 24 TV, and the other is Demokracija magazine. The hateful anti-immigration discourse culminated during the so-called refugee crisis in 2015 and 2016. It culminated in the way that also the national broadcasters were unable to moderate the hate speech, so they temporarily shut down the comment sections of their online portals. Consequently, an anti-hate speech vigilante digital activist group emerged in October 2018 and created the website Slovenia. Zlo would translate evil in English, The site's creators gathered screenshots of hate speech comments made by ordinary people on Facebook and then published them alongside publicly available personal photos of the persons who posted the comments, exposing and shaming them until they publicly apologized. The third chapter is the main one of the report, and it deals with the analysis of the representation, circulation, and consumption context of the media objects. The report employs analytical interpretations to dissect individual cases of radicalization, of racialization in cultural text published in Demokracija, the SDP-affiliated magazine, and also in similar terms it analyzes the SDP's 2018 general election campaign. There were 21 Demokracija front pages that fit the racialization profile, as well as 3 SDP propaganda media objects, including a propaganda video, an offline poster, and an online poster. Offline and online circulation and consumption via Facebook and other social media platforms were also addressed in this report, though there were also some difficulties, not only in terms of scope and number of engagements, but also of the level of radicalization, for example, because of major restrictions on hate speech being employed by social media, resulting in videos not being open for comments, or migration of far-right groups and far-right contents to closed Facebook groups and less popular apps. The report demonstrates that racialization and othering strategies are frequently used in SDP-related media. Whiteness is a central issue, and it is persistently defended, mostly by avoiding direct biological racism and instead employing a slightly more ambiguous discourse which shows white Slovenians and Europeans' superiority in cultural rather than narrowly biological racial terms. The first analysis, as mentioned, deals with front covers of Demokracija magazine between 2015 and 2021 that feature whiteness-related or migrants-related issues. It divides them into these 2 categories, and in the whiteness cover category are included only those that addressed whiteness but did not address migrants, whereas in the migrants cover category there are those that addressed migrants as well as possibly the issue of whiteness, which is quite often connected to it. There were 3 of the whiteness cover category front pages and 18 of the migrants cover category front pages. We can see the next slide, please. So a whiteness related example is the one on the top left here, and it shows a picture of five white women with different hair colors and says in the title, "Diversity is beautiful and Europe is already different enough." The one next to it, so on the top right, is an example of migrants related front cover. It must be said that the covers of Demokracija appear to portray migration and migrants in specific demographic categories, burdening them with negative connotations and ancient myths. They employ also the most obvious color dichotomy between white and black, and migrants are perceived as nothing more than a threat. And this threat is very deliberately racialized, as evident by covers that depict migrants as rapists. This photo brings together a young woman with bruises and wounds on her face and hands, pulling her arms to her chest in a defensive position, and she is threatened by what appear to be a stereotypical African pointed spear and a stereotypical Middle Eastern dagger. The heading reads, "Criminal cultures threaten Europe." The last example is an SDP campaign poster, and it must be said that the SDP politicians and SDP-related media have been using racialized discourse extensively and for a long time. However, the so-called Syrian refugee crisis has arguably become their deliberate strategy and common feature to do that. The exploitation of stereotypes and manipulations about migrants has become so systemic and repetitive that it seems to have been employed on purpose and as a strategy to gain support from prejudiced audiences and concerned voters. The normalization of such discourse was arguably most obvious in political campaigns preceding the 2018 parliamentary and 2019 European elections. The report therefore analyzes this SDP pre-election political propaganda on the migrant issue. They used the slogan, which is also on the poster here, Zavarovali bomo Slovenijo, which would translate, "We will protect Slovenia," and almost the same slogan had been used before by the names of two Facebook groups, both founded during the 2015 migration influx, and they were later banned from Facebook two years later in 2017, so before this election, due to publishing hate speech. SDP not only copied this anti-migrant slogan, but they also copied the entire concept, we could say the iconography of their poster, not from the two mentioned Facebook groups, but from almost an identical concept, which was used in Hungary by Viktor Orban's government's anti-migrant propaganda a few months earlier. And also the Hungarian poster was a copy of an earlier infamous breaking point poster from UKIP's Brexit campaign. The stop sign, which is quite large here, so this stop sign, along with the slogan already mentioned, "We will protect Slovenia," frames the issue of migration as a security threat and migrants as an invading force, an enemy in both the billboard and online versions of the SDP image. The migrants here are represented as a large queue or caravan of poorly dressed non-white people walking down a gravel road in what appears to be Slovenian countryside. They are represented not as individuals in need of help, but rather as a generic, faceless, massive, dark horde that must be contained. In the final chapter of the report, the links between the SDP and SDP-affiliated media racialization, as well as new anti-migrant vigilante paramilitary groups, are discussed. To conclude, the portrayal of non-white migrants in the SDP-related media affects Slovenian population's perception of migrants in line with the most degrading racial stereotypes and Orientalist prejudice, potentially leading to hateful perceptions and bigoted assumptions regarding non-white migrants in Slovenia among a significant number of Slovene citizens. Non-white migrants, as also other non-whites in Slovenia, either residents or even the citizens, are persistently excluded from the symbolic community of people who are welcome in Slovenia by such propaganda. This could and most probably does have grave consequences for the possibility of the participation of non-whites in the democratic political process in Slovenia. Since hate speech is not rigorously prosecuted in Slovenia, the alliance of SDP, their radicalized supporters using the social media, and the SDP-affiliated media enables and encourages the production of a specific political and media climate that readily condones racialized representations of migrants. Furthermore, the discourse employed by these actors is often accompanied by calls to action, by calls to defense even. It should come as no surprise then that according to the most recent Europol report on radicalization and terrorism, the main security threat in Slovenia is precisely the paramilitary groups pretexting the state's impotence to protect the population against the perceived threat from Islam and immigration. As a result, we must question whether the emergence of such disturbing phenomena as paramilitary hate groups targeting migrants is not enough to prompt a change in Slovenian hate speech legislation and hate speech prevention policies. Thank you.